the very first scenario that we're going to talk about is single people with no life insurance. A lot of people would tell you, Ian, single people, what do they need life insurance for? They're not married, they don't have kids. But I'm going to make a case to you why single people should have life insurance, especially through the Primerica companies, because this product is so unique, has so many benefits to it that are going to put these clients in a lot better position down the road. So we're going to role play this, okay? That's the best way to learn, is to watch exactly what I do, learn it word for word, practice drawing the presentations, and then when you find the scenario real time at the kitchen table, you're prepared. You know exactly what to do. Skills pay the bills. So skill up, right? Get these things down, get them exact, have them in your repertoire, and when you come across these scenarios at the kitchen table, you're going to be able to use them, and you're going to be able to use them fluently, and people are going to go forward with you at a lot higher rate than they have been before. So let's take a look at how the schematic of this process is going to work, okay? So we're going to, once we've identified what presentation we're giving, we're obviously going to give the presentation associated with what sort of scenario this client is in. That's going to be different. Once that presentation is complete, then we're going to ask the closing questions, okay? So the closing questions are going to be the same every time. Once we've asked the closing questions, we're going to go ahead and move into the close and getting the application started. That process is the same every time. So what I need you to understand is the scenario is going to give you a different presentation, but after the presentation's done, you go right into the closing questions and then right into the close and taking the app. All right, so let's start with our first scenario, which is a single person with no life insurance. So a lot of our clients that are single will look at that and think, I'm not really sure I need life insurance. But I believe very strongly that people do need life insurance that are single for a number of reasons. So here's the conversation that I'm going to have with a client. So we're talking to Bob. Bob is single. He doesn't have any children. And I'm going to ask Bob a question. I'm going to say, Bob, have you ever considered having life insurance? Sometimes they do. A lot of times they say, I've thought about it. But most of the time they're saying, well, no, I haven't really thought about it. I'm not married. I don't have kids. I say, well, Bob, do you mind if I give you just a couple-minute education on why I think it's important for single people to have life insurance? Generally, he's going to say yes, and that's what I'm doing. I'm getting little yeses along the way to a big yes, right? So the presentation that I'm going to use for single people with no life insurance goes as follows. So, Bob, the cost of life insurance is really based on two things, okay? What do you think those two things are, Bob? And I let Bob answer, right? Because I learned a long time ago that when you say it, the prospect doubts every word. When they say it, it's 100% true. So I want to get the client, the prospect, involved in the process so they understand what we're doing. An educated consumer is the best consumer when it comes to dealing with Primerica life insurance companies, MBL in New York. Okay, so the cost, Bob, is based on two things. What do you think those two things are? And I let them think about it. Generally, they get them right. If they don't get them right, I help them along. But the first answer is age, right, Bob? Of course it's age, right? The older you are, the more expensive it's going to get. Bob, let me ask you a question. Will you ever be younger in the future than you are today? And Bob's going to say, well, of course not, right? Okay, so you're guaranteed to be getting older. The second factor in determining the cost of your life insurance is your health. So, Bob, let me ask you a question. Have you ever heard of people who get healthier and healthier and healthier as life goes on? No, of course not, right? The way God made our bodies, we do not get healthier and healthier as life goes on. We become less and less healthy. So if we know that this commodity, this product of life insurance, is going to cost more in the future, absolutely going to cost more in the future because we're getting older and we're getting less and less healthy, would it make sense to get it now while it's as cheap as possible, or does it make sense to wait and be guaranteed to pay much, much more potentially into the future? Of course, it would make sense to lock it in at the lowest rate. The second benefit, Bob, is something called a living benefit. Most people think the worst thing that could happen to them financially would be to pass away prematurely. But Bob, in your situation, you're not married, you don't have kids, way, way, way worse than that would be for you to get very, very, very sick, but not pass away immediately, right? Because you'd have skyrocketing medical bills. We all know health insurance doesn't pay for everything. Most people who have terminal cancer, let's say, they're not going from radiation to chemotherapy to work, right? So their bills are skyrocketing because of medical expenses. Their income is going down because they're not working as much or at all, right? So if your expenses go up and your income goes down, Bob, is that a good or a bad thing? That's a bad thing, right? Well, if something were to happen to you, God forbid, where you were diagnosed with a terminal illness, and there's some different things. You got to read the contract, exactly what qualifies, how it works. They got to get a note from it. They've got to be seen by a physician, et cetera. Okay, but Bob, if you were able to have a benefit where you had access to, let's say, $250,000 of money that you could get if, God forbid, you were diagnosed with that terminal illness, and you could use that money to maybe take your family on a vacation or seek alternative medical treatment that your insurance didn't pay for, or any number of things. If you had access to that $250,000, would that help you in that situation that, God forbid, something like that happened? Of course it would. Do you have access to $250,000 right now in any other way? No, you don't, right? So that's a reason why you would want this, a benefit to having that. Bob, the third reason that I believe that single people should have life insurance is life insurance is there to protect the people we love and care about in case of a premature death. And I ask him, I say, Bob, let me ask you a question. Is there anybody in your life that you love and care about greatly that struggles financially right now? And Bob will answer. Everybody has somebody like that. And I'd say, Bob, if God forbid something were to happen to you, and 2 or 3 weeks later, a check arrived in their mailbox, and it paid off their mortgage, or it sent their kids to school, or it helped them actually be able to retire, how would they feel about you having done that for them? It would change their life, right? Of course they'd feel incredible. Okay, Bob, would we want something to stop you from being able to help your family like that? Of course not, right? So that's why it makes sense for you to do this. All right, let's go ahead and go forward. So that's scenario one. That's single people with no life insurance. Let's talk about scenario number two. Scenario number two is married people or people with kids that have no life insurance, okay? So you're at the kitchen table, you're talking to Bob and Susan. They're married, they've got 2 little kids running around in the background, and you're talking about life insurance. You say, by the way, Bob, who do you guys have your life insurance through? And they reply, well, we don't have any life insurance. So this is exactly what I do. I kind of sit back a little bit. I say, Bob, you have no life insurance? And I let them react. Most people understand this is something they need to be doing. So that reaction that they give me is going to tell me kind of where they're at. And here's the presentation I give to them. I say, Bob, when I meet people that are married with kids like you are that don't have life insurance, it's generally for one of 3 reasons, okay? The first reason is they kind of know they need to do it. See, I'm shaking my head yes, right? They kind of know they need to do it. They just really haven't gotten around to getting it done, okay? The second reason is sometimes people are concerned about the cost. They really haven't looked into it much. They're just afraid of another expense, okay? Now, the third reason, Bob, and I'm sure this isn't you, okay? I'll just tell you that right up front, but believe it or not, every once in a while, Bob, I meet people who just don't care about what happens to their family. Now, obviously, that's not you, right? We're sitting here, you have a great family. So Bob, if that's not you, which of the first 2 reasons would you say is the primary reason that you don't have this right now? And I let them answer. And if it's they know they need to get it done, I say, well, we're going to help solve that tonight. Okay, we're going to get that done for you. If it's a cost issue, I'll ask them another question. I'll say, well, what do you think it would cost for you to have that? Okay, and I just let them put out some ballpark, and then I go into the closing questions, which we're going to get to. So that's it for the presentation. Very quick, 3 bullet points, right? No, cost, and don't care. Okay, but listen to me on this. You can't say I meet people who don't care about their family. The first thing you say is, believe it or not, and I know this isn't you, you make sure you let them know it's not them, okay? I'm sure this isn't you, but every once in a while I meet people who just don't care, okay, about what happens to their family. So get that off the table, and they'll pick from one of the first 2, and then you can address that concern, ask some closing questions, and get them to move forward.